of just the Islamic movement.
I want to join to this conversation. With us on the line on Skype from London is Jordanian-Palestinian politician Mudar Zahran. Good evening. Good to see you back again with us, Mudar.
Always good to see you, Lucy. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure, Mudar. Mudar, you know, we've been talking about maybe that it got to do with politics, it got to do with democracy. But, you know, every time that I start trying to think about a democracy and Islam, it doesn't work, at least from what I'm seeing right now on the ground. The only place that I actually saw it in one way or another, and again, it's controversial for some people, is in Azerbaijan, and also there, it's, let's say, a controlled democracy, not an actual democracy. So maybe democracy doesn't go with Islam, or maybe Islam needs to reform itself.
Well, okay, we have to call things by their own name. I was very entertained listening to your guests about how beautiful my religion is. I am, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I am an Orthodox Muslim. I am a practicing Orthodox Muslim who thanks God, prays 5 times a day. But we have to call things by their own name. The Quran as a text, is a rather peaceful text. There are 109 verses of violence and jihad in Quran, verses up to, I think, 40,000 other verses. So it's a very small chunk of so-called violence compared to any other religious book, including the Torah to an extent, the Bible. And so it's not necessarily a violent book, regardless of any issues it may or may not have.
So from where the violence is coming?
The problem actually comes from the hadith. Let me be clear, I am a hadith believer. I believe we must follow the Prophet about what he says. The only problem is we don't know that the things that we have in the hadith have been said. First of all, the hadith was written down 400 years after our Prophet died. I'm sure Mr. Bukhari and Mr. Muslim, Sahih Muslim, they never had Google. They never had the Harvard Library to verify the hadith. So basically, there's no evidence whatsoever that many of the war in hadith come from. Now, if you watch Anaisa's video, most of what they use is in the hadith. They rarely use verses from the Quran in the videos. And now, what's the hadith, to be honest with you? What are the war values in hadith? The war values in hadith are very clear. They are basically jihad. They are basically what ISIS is doing. I am, again, an Orthodox Muslim, but unless we listen to people like Sisi, unless we come and say we need to scrutinize what's in the hadith for our own good, I'll give you just a very quick example.
Just a second, Mudar, because here I see that they want to comment about what you're saying. Please, Mr. Falah, please.
First of all, I don't agree with Mr. Mudar that there is some verses of the Quran speak about cruelty. There is no single verse in the Quran talks about violence. The Quran speaks, you fight those who are fighting you. This is what he said. You can defend yourself. Then, according to Hadith, the Holy Prophet Muhammad said, look at the Hadith and compare it with the Quran. If it is agree with the Quran, accept it. If it doesn't agree with the Quran, refuse it. So all these Hadiths which are against the Quran, we don't accept. The Quran is the book of peace, and there is only peace in the Quran.
Mudar, I will let you answer just before I will let you answer, Mr. Al-Ajrami, I want you also to comment on that.
I think it is the main problem is what it is not related to the Quran and to Hadith. It is related to culture. It is related to poverty. It is related to dictatorship. It is related to life of people. It is related to the societies. So it's something very crucial if we want to see what is the problem. When I see that Ibn Taymiyyah and Abu al-A'la al-Mawdudi, they are the most extremist Muslim leaders.
Yes.
But at least who can follow them? when people go to this kind of extremism, because of their social and economical situation, people go to protect themselves under any kind of ceiling.
And Mudar, you know, if we're talking about and we're mixing the culture with economy and with, of course, the situation and the lives that we're living right now, Google, Wikipedia, and Sector and Sector, Facebook, and all of that. You know, maybe our voices of the moderate leaders, of moderate Islam, if it exists, I don't know, it's not heard enough. Maybe we need to blame ourselves for bending to the extremists, for bending to the Islamic State, for bending to people like al-Baghdadi and like, let's say, al-Qaeda leaders.
Well, that's absolutely true. There's no simple answer for this. We need also to start with just what Sisi started with, which is basically reformation of the text. I agree that the dictatorships, the economic corruption and distress do lead into people joining the Islamic fundamentalism, but it all starts with corrupted text, which has, just like your guest said, has no merit in Islam. For example, the Khaybar massacre of the Jews, which are verified, and I found 7 mistakes in one single story, 7 mistakes where Muhammad ﷺ allegedly butchered the Jews in Medina, and so on. But we have uninformed people. We have the radicals taking the stage. Now, where do most Muslims stand? Are Muslims moderates or terrorists? Again, I've said this before, we are 1.6 billion Muslims. If we had only 10% terrorists, the world would be on fire. That's 160 million. We're not on fire like that. But most terrorists, they basically, in addition to bad economic conditions, they have just simply read the corrupted text, like the text of Ibn Taymiyyah, and the radical stuff like that. And then we have the majority of Muslims, which they haven't read either the Quran or the Hadith.
Mudar, so, you know, maybe we should, like I said, maybe we should blame ourselves, because maybe we are too silent. Maybe we should start yelling and not making, letting this minority, these 10% or these 5% or 2% making too much noise, but too much noise. Mudar Zahran, thank you very much. You're always a pleasure to have you here. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for being with me. Of course, we are always continuing to discuss these matters here on I-24 News. We're going out for a small break, 2 minutes, and I'll be back for the one-on-one. Don't go anywhere.